All right. Welcome. Culturally Damaged with Parker and Dan Parri. Mr. Parker, what's been going on this week with you?
Man, nothing that you really want to hear about. Just a bunch of work. Partners out of town this week, so been holding down the fort, but just doing Zoom hearings and talking to clients. Nothing exciting, man. I wish I had something more exciting to report. What about you?
Well, did you do anything this weekend at all?
I mean, last
fun stuff the last couple weekends.
The weekend is starting right now. Last weekend, gosh, what did we do? Yeah, we went to Legoland.
That's right. How'd that go?
Went to Legoland. Legoland was very interesting. I thought that it was closer to like all the other theme parks, but it's actually out kind of like in Winter Haven by Lakeland, out in that area. So kind of a country drive to get out there. But it's interesting. It's a neat place. Good for the youngsters. We had to be careful because very COVID conscious. So, but they did a good job. Everyone has to wear a mask the whole time you're there, and the lines are kind of long, but people are distant, so they seem longer. But yeah, the kiddos liked it. It's fun. It's not overly much. It's not like going to Disney World. It's a lot less sophisticated in terms of the rides and stuff, but the Legos are pretty impressive.
Well, how do you think the kids liked it? Do you think the kids care if it's Legoland or Disney, or to them it's?
Yeah, if I say a huge sculpture made out of Lego blocks, like I'm really impressed by that. To them, I don't think they really care. I don't think that they really appreciate the fact that someone probably used 1 million Lego pieces to make a car that looks exactly like a car. But yeah, they liked it though. The main thing, I think my 7-year-old liked it. I think the main reason he liked it was because at the end of the day, he gets to go into the store and pick out a bunch of Lego stuff to take home. But they like it. It's fun. It's an amusement park. So
did they still have the Dalmatian display up there? The 101 Dalmatians? I didn't see any pictures of them, so I was wondering.
I didn't know. I didn't see that. I did not see that. There's lots of places in that park that we did not make, but They always get you on that Florida residence things where if you pay like $5 a month, you get an annual membership. So of course we did that. So I'm sure I'll be back, and if it's there, we will find it.
All right, I appreciate that. That's really the only thing I care about when I go to parks or stores or anything, is just looking to find out where is the Dalmatian stuff, if they have any, and if they do, I got to get a picture. So other than that, I really don't care about Legoland, Disney, all the other stuff. If they have a Dalmatian thing, I'll go look at that, and then it's time to leave.
Yeah, well, when you pay that kind of money, you might as well stick around for a little bit.
Well, I guess that's probably why I don't spend that kind of money on that stuff.
Yeah, they have a hotel now, like on the actual Legoland, and we looked into that and said, oh, that might be cool if we just stay there in this Lego. It looks like everything's made out of Lego. Like I feel like the bed inside's probably made out of Lego and all the furniture, but it was like literally $1,000 a night to stay in the hotel on Legoland. Yeah, so needless to say, we didn't stay there, but yeah, it was pretty neat.
Sounds like the Trump hotel during inauguration his inauguration, right? When they were charging like 3 or 4 times the amount.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you can get it, I guess, right?
Unless you're the president and you're not allowed to do that. What do they call that? What is that? What is that clause? I don't know. There's some clause that says that you can't make money when you're the president off of being the president.
Emolumation.
Yes.
Something like that.
We'll need one of our language graduates here, or
it's a clause.
Education graduates here to help us with that one. So
yeah, I think that law was violated quite a bit over the past couple of years, but I did see that the tax returns are now with the prosecutor now, so that should be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The Supreme Court allowed it; they didn't stop it.
So I don't know if you're aware of this, but today Ray's spring ticket sales went on sale. So the Rays season starts actually the 28th, I think, the last day. I don't know if this is a leap year or not, but 28th, February 28th, spring training starts already. So
yeah,
baseball.
Yeah, the Blue Jays are playing today here in town, I believe, or at least their season started today.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, baseball is. I was gonna say kicking off, but that wouldn't make any sense.
No, and normally downtown Dunedin is pretty packed and lots of people here when spring training is here too. So I'm wondering, it'll be interesting to see what the volume of traffic is. Last year there was no spring training, So there was no, or I guess it got canceled very, very.
Yeah, it was starting out. And then they sent everybody home basically.
Yeah, so I wonder what downtown Dunedin's going to look like when you can only have like 6,000 people in the stands. So, hey,
yeah, I don't know. If you want, I can poke my head out the front door and look.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see.
It looked a little busy when I was out in the front lobby for lunch today. I usually just go next door sometimes to Hopscotch, like I mentioned last week, and I went out there, and they were getting a little bit more business than usual, and so it looked like things were kind of kicking up. I think we're going to see an uptick here, thanks to baseball. Even though not a lot of people can go to the games, I think a lot of the Canadians still come down here. I don't think they come down here necessarily for the games. It's just an annual trip down to Florida for a month.
Well, obviously, I'm sure the city of Dunedin will disagree with you. I'm sure that part of the reason that they spend all this money on the Blue Jays is knowing that lots of people from Toronto and other places in Canada do come down, and not only that, but also move here. And so, obviously, there are, it's only anecdotal, but I'll say there's probably 3 to 4 times the number of Canadian cars in and around the Dunedin area than there would be in other areas of Pinellas County. So
yeah, I'm not saying they don't come down here for the Blue Jays. I'm just saying that they come down regardless of whether or not that they can go into the ballpark to watch the games, because they just love Dunedin. They love coming down here, and they spend a lot of money here. I had trivia last night in Dunedin, and there were a couple of new teams that were Canadian, and it's getting to the point now. We've been doing it so long, we're actually starting to see the same people every year. They're coming in at a certain time of year.
Do you only give them 0.75 points per point? Or do their points equal the same, dollar for dollar as American points?
We give them the same, but they drink the Molson's beer, and they ask for more Wayne Gretzky questions. And contrary to most people's beliefs, some of them are kind of rude.
Yeah.
You get people from Toronto. It's a big city.
Well, they're French, so I mean that's different. French or no, that's Montreal, right?
Yes. No, they're fine people. As long as they come down here and spend their money and get in trouble and hire us, we're good.
I understand. If they get in trouble, they hire Chris Parker. That's right. So, so we got the Rays going. So it's beautiful. The weather is beautiful, obviously, for spring training too. So I think we're gonna have an entire week of sun, no rain, no more cold, none of that. Ugh, who needs that stuff?
Is it time to start planting the gardens already? What do you think?
I've been doing landscaping lately, and so I put the bulbs in the ground. I did some stuff for caladiums and some other stuff, and those are things that you got to plant in January, February. So I'm hoping in March or April those suckers will start sprouting up as the rains. We get a little bit more rain coming.
Yeah, yeah, man. We got to get the leaves out of our yards, man. We got a huge oak tree in our front yard, and it's apocalyptic almost, the amount of leaves that are just raining down on my grass. So every weekend I literally have to blow leaves, and I got this little vacuum now that vacuums all the leaves up and grinds them up and puts them in this backpack that's on me. So I'm walking around the yard sucking leaves up. But I think last week we got 8 construction bags full of leaves off the front lawn, and I think right now if I did it again, I'd probably get the same amount.
So what do you prefer doing, snow blowing or picking up leaves?
The blowing's the best part. I mean, because you've got the snow blower, you've got a strategy of how you're going to herd these leaves around the yard and get them into one place, and that's kind of strategic. But last week I had the 7-year-old out there raking, the wife raking, so it was a beautiful scene. But they all wanted to go miniature golfing in Clearwater Beach, and I told them as soon as I get this done, we'll do it. So they're all out there, raking and blowing, and so,
while you were in the pool, right?
No. I was with them, but you got to check out this vacuum. It's electric. You got to plug it in, so you have a long cord. But you literally have this big tube that comes down, and it sucks the leaves into a backpack that you're wearing, and it grinds them up so you can hold more. And I know this is not really exciting radio, but you ever see those commercials where the insurance commercials where they're like, don't do these things like your parents do, and the guy's trying to train them on how to not do old people things. That's the kind of things that excite you though when you get into your 40s. It's just like trying to figure out new and better ways to rake leaves.
Well, for those of us who have families and homes and all that kind of stuff, I would agree. For the perpetual bachelor living in the apartment with 2 dogs, not so much. So
yeah, you don't know much about the mulch game, man.
Hey, I know plenty about the mulch game. I do my own mulching, but yeah, that's at the office though. So it's not quite the same thing that when you have to do these things around the home, I at least feel some sort of like work type thing because I'm doing it at the office. So
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's almost like you feel like you can't do anything fun until you at least go out and do a couple chores in the yard. We do have a lemon tree now, and I don't know if I told you that. We put a lemon tree in in the winter time, and so it's starting to grow. So we're hoping to get some lemons, man, within the next 6 months.
Tim appreciates you and your story about the yard vacuum. I did visit Tim a little while ago, picked up some rubber Tuppermade things or what do you call bins, plastic bins, and he has a pretty big yard, so I'm not sure how many trees, but he might be calling you about that yard vacuum.
I'm telling you, man, it was a gift, and it was one of the best gifts I've ever received. I now have the backpack blower, and I have the backpack leaf sucker. And I mean, I sort of feel like a badass around my neighborhood now. Like I feel like people drive by and are like, "Whoa, man, the guy's got it going on."
That's probably not what's happening, but at least that's good to think that, though. You know?
Yeah. No, it's cool. It's cool. I like yard work. That's another thing. When you get older, you start to like yard work, and you start to enjoy it. You know,
well, it's exercise. You know, like you got to have exercise anyway, so you might as well do something productive like yard work. Make your the county, the city, and your little neighborhood a little bit more beautiful. So.
Yeah, it's kind of fun because it's also competitive, right? Because you have neighbors, and you're like, man, that dude's yard looks good.
Yard of the month sign?
No, we don't. We don't. I tell you, I do have a neighbor who has a bread truck, and I don't know why he has a bread truck. I think he uses it like as a second garage, and he pulls it up into his driveway. And I only say this because I know he's not listening, but he has a bread truck, and it is just I don't know what to do. I don't want to report it. You know, it's like it shouldn't be there. It kind of devalues the aesthetics of the neighborhood. What would you do in a situation? Would you park a bread truck in your neighborhood?
I would not, but if I were you, I'd probably just keep my mouth shut. It's kind of like complaining, you know, or trying to sue a nursing home while you're still living there. I would suggest that you not make any complaints against your neighbors unless you're ready to move. So we've seen those stories. At least I think you said he's across the street. So at least it's not a next door neighbor that's going to pour chemicals over your fence and all that other poop and all that kind of stuff like crazy neighbors can get. So
yeah, well, you know, I have a history of the Hatfields and the McCoys, you know, so we are very aware of how that could get out of hand. But no, we're very cool with those neighbors. Most neighbors we're cool with. There's a couple quiet ones in the neighborhood we don't mess with. We just assume that they probably are making meth in their house. But you know, we just keep to our own. We did have a little run-in with the people across the street a couple years ago. We got a little too hot at a Super Bowl party. Yeah, we had a Super Bowl party, and we took our battery-powered Bluetooth speaker over there to see if they wanted to party with us, and they weren't too receptive of the idea of hanging out with us, and so we took it personally. And that's been about 4 years, and I don't think we've really spoken with them since.
And that had nothing to do with coronavirus. They just didn't want to hang out with you.
No, they just did. They were like, "No, you guys aren't hanging out here."
At least now we can all just blame coronavirus. Oh, sorry, I can't hang out.
They were just not down with us. In fact, I would venture to say that we were very obnoxious, and that's probably why they didn't want to hang out with us. Yeah, that was like. Have you ever done keto? Have you ever done like no carbs? I know you cut down on sugar and everything, but
I just cut down carbs. I don't have I don't exclude them 100%.
When you get into ketosis, it's kind of dangerous to drink a lot because your body can only absorb so much alcohol. And if we have a dietitian that comes on here and corrects me, that's fine. But I have noticed that when I'm in heavy ketosis, my body's burning fat instead of carbs, that the alcohol has a much stronger effect. And that was one of those nights. And drinking, I guess, so much probably didn't help. But
well, as you mentioned that, so I've been in talks with a friend of mine, Wendy Wesley. So she is a dietitian. And she actually is doing some stuff, video and some radio, different things. And we're going to try to get her on here in middle of March. So I think what we'd like to do, I know this is maybe news to Kris, but we've talked in the past about having guests on. And I think we're going to try to do is starting in the middle of March, that'll be spring is starting. We're going to try to bring you some guests. And our first one is, or at least one of our first will be Wendy. And she can actually discuss some of this stuff we talk about with keto and these other sort of diets and things like that and give our listeners some help. I know we all struggle, whether we're overweight, underweight, whatever we have, we all struggle with our diet. We're all looking for new ways to eat healthier and still have taste. And so I think that's the important part too. And so Wendy will be happy to give us some insight on that. So she has a lot more. Obviously, I've lived a lot of this, but I don't have the medical background or the science behind it. And so I think she can help with some of that stuff, even discussing keto, the advantages, disadvantages, and all these other types of things that people do, whether it's fasting, but she also kind of has the same theory that I do, at least from a base perspective, that we should be able to get all of our nutrition and everything from our food. And that if we eat correctly, that should take care of most of those problems. So,
it's tough, especially being from a culture where, there's not a lot of education provided on eating effectively or eating wisely. Being from West Virginia, it's a lot of biscuits and gravy and, everything's fried. And, you grow up thinking that you can eat that, you should exercise, but you can eat that. It's hard to change, especially when you get into your 20s and your 30s. And it's all fun and games until your metabolism catches up on you and you're not as active as you used to be. And then the weight starts coming on. But it is tough to change, but you have to start at a young age. And that's what we're trying to do with our kids, is to get them to start eating right and to eat the right things, to drink water. And I still struggle with that to this day, is drinking water is still very difficult for me.
Well, and as you mentioned, I think it's a lot easier to start out with healthy habits than it is to change unhealthy habits to healthy habits. And you're right. And I was just thinking about it the other day. How many years, all the years I worked at Publix when I was 16 through 20 something, all these other times, I remember with our friend Quentin, used to go to not Chick-fil-A, it was Checkers. We get chicken sandwiches every day, 2 chicken sandwiches, French fries. I've probably eaten thousands of fast food sandwiches and French fries and Diet Cokes and all those things. And you think, God, how lucky I am to be here. But that's the reality. Our bodies can deal with this stuff for a long time, and it's like the liver as far as alcohol and all that kind of stuff. The liver will work. It'll compensate. And our bodies will do the same until one day. And then you pass that threshold and the bodies can't keep up with it anymore. And that's when we start with diabetes, heart disease, and some of these other things. And it is difficult to change, but I think it's the mindset. Obviously, you have to, once you decide that it's important enough for you, just like anything in life, when you decide that it's important, when you decided that Raquel was the one, you made time in your life for her, even though you probably didn't think you had time for it. And so I think the same thing kind of happens with food and health and all that, is once you make that decision, you'll find a way.
Yeah, you have to prioritize it. Like you said, once you've realized that that's the most important thing and that it has to go up, because you're like, well, where am I going to find time to work out? Or am I going to find time to eat right? Because I've got this to do, this to do, this to do. But when you think about it, all these other things that you've listed that you have to do, and you're trying to put your diet and your lifestyle and you're trying to put it in between all those things, you need to put it on the top, because it is the most important thing. And if you don't have a healthy lifestyle, you're not going to make it long enough to be able to enjoy your retirement and all these things that you're working so hard towards. So it is important, and it's always a struggle. It is. And sometimes you have better days. It's not like one day you fix it and it gets better. Sometimes you struggle with it. I know I have cheat days that turn into 2 cheat days, that turn into 3 cheat days. And next thing you know, I'm like, I'm right where I started from. But it is tough. But you got to find the time. If it's important to you, you'll find the time.
And I think that's, one thing, as you bring up cheat days, I have to tell people, I don't really believe in cheat days. So I do obviously take days off from the workouts and all that kind of stuff, because you have to let your body rest and recover, even though that's not something I enjoy doing. I prefer to keep pushing as hard as I can and kind of just hope for the best. But that doesn't always work. But I don't really believe in cheat days. I kind of feel like if you plan cheat days, I don't care. Like if you just say, all right, today I'm going to have whatever, that's not a problem. But some people will say, all right, I'm going to eat well Monday through Saturday, but Sunday I'm going to eat whatever I want. And I don't like the idea of that, only because like I feel like you're setting yourself up. Like obviously, if you have a day like that, if it's a Super Bowl and you want to go over to somebody's house and you want to go crazy, fine, you just restart the next day. But I think sometimes when people like give themselves this cheat day, it just makes it harder long term. Again, not that you shouldn't.
No, it does, because it breaks good habits. It really does, and it makes you want to work towards and reward yourself with bad food, and that's a bad mindset, is rewarding yourself with bad food. In fact, you shouldn't reward yourself by doing something bad to your body, and that's how I should look at it, but I don't always look at it that way. Sometimes it's tough because you have, say, like, Thanksgiving dinner, and your mom cooks this big dinner, and you're like, I'm not going to eat any of it because I can't eat this, I can't eat this, I can't eat this. So I'm kind of a moderation person. I think that sometimes you can go off and do this and do that, but not every week. Like, I could go Monday through Friday, and I've done this. I did this last week. I went Monday through Friday, and I ate right, and I walked, and I got all my steps in, and I probably lost about 6 or 7 pounds from doing that, just because a lot of it was probably water weight, but I still was able to get all that weight off that I'd added on. And then in the 2 days of Saturday and Sunday of eating whatever I wanted to, just complete laissez-faire, eating whatever I wanted to, I gained it all back. Every bit of 2 days, I gained it all back. And I'm like, what am I doing?
I obviously, I eat just like everybody else. Well, I don't eat like everybody else, but, I get bored. I eat when I'm stressed. I do all those things. But for me, a lot of it is just a matter of keeping healthier food, not calorie-free food, but just healthier food around the house, so that when I do want to binge eat at 11 o'clock at night, it's either going to be like popcorn, or it's going to be apples and oranges and frozen berries. So I just don't have coffee cake and brownies and even loaves of bread in the house, so that I could just devour when I get hungry. So I don't trust myself.
I don't trust you either.
Thank you.
That's true.
Yeah. So, lately we've had some, we got a couple comments here. Let's see what's going on.
Who's talking?
Tony.
Yeah. Tony
days. Yeah, that's right. That's what I agree. Alcohol, poison. Well, alcohol is okay. There's nothing wrong with the occasional alcohol, or even, I guess, more than occasional alcohol, as long as it's in relative moderation. But yeah, I mean, alcohol, obviously, even for me, myself, like, I don't do carbs, but if I want to drink, like, there's just no alternative. You got to drink. So alcohol is alcohol, but, again, in moderation,
Justin Woods knows nothing about moderation.
Yeah,
I once saw Justin Woods drink 100 beers in a weekend.
Those are the old days.
These guys used to partake in the Century Club, and I know we talked about it on the show too many times, but every time I see him and he talks about beer, I'm like, I can't forget the Century Club. And so they start on Friday night, and between Friday night and Sunday night, their rules were that in order to accomplish the goal, you had to drink 100 beers between Friday night and Saturday. I'm sure he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but if you completed the 100 beers within that time, you were in the Century Club. These were back in fraternity days. I can't say that I ever partook in the Century Club, not because of any other reason that I knew I would fail. There was no way I could do it. But they all had their own strategies of how many they would drink and when they would sleep and how they would wake up and how they would handle their hangover and start drinking again. But I think Justin completed it at least 2 or 3 times. So yeah, he's not one for moderation with the brewskis.
Look, I'm not one for much with moderation either. That's pretty much why I take like the approach of zero tolerance in certain areas like sugar, because I have clearly demonstrated an ability to not moderate.
It's a zero tolerance policy with sobriety.
No, that's sobriety is a whole different ballgame. So just sugar. Sugar is the only one. Twice. Jason said he only did it. Justin said only twice. So
twice. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Making him sound like he's some sort of raging alcoholic here, saying that he did that 3 or 4 times. Only literally drink 100 beers.
Has a ring with a bottle opener on it. No, Justin has his own beer too, so he keeps it in house.
So I don't know if you've been aware, but lately we've had a couple bills being proposed here in Florida Some of these things are relating to the mail ballots. Have you heard about that stuff?
I have, and it's just becoming blatant. I mean, at this point, let's just go out there and just say it. We want as few people as possible on that side of the fence to vote because the demographics are not going our way. Our party is becoming fractured. So the only way we can possibly win is to get our base out and suppress their vote. So, I mean, is there anybody even still denying the fact that Republicans are suppressing the vote? I mean, is that even an argument anymore? It's just a matter of being successful.
When you propose bills that have to do with IDs, like there's at least some semblance of cover, at least for what you're doing, right?
Yeah, right.
We shouldn't have voting on Sundays.
Yeah. Well, and for anybody who doesn't know about this, and Dan, I know you do, but in the campaign, working in campaigns, we work to organize the Black vote a lot on Sundays because one of the major congregation of Black people is at church on Sundays, and we have a thing called Souls to the Polls, and everyone gets together after church and goes and votes together, and it's sort of become a tradition. There's a lot of camaraderie. It's entangled in culture, and when you take that away and you take away that Sunday voting, you take away that opportunity. Now, there are people that are going to say, well, who cares? Why can't you just go vote on Saturday or go vote on Friday? But why are we taking away voting opportunities to begin with? Now, God forbid anybody try to infringe on your Second Amendment rights, right? If we try to make it harder for people who are...
But you can't buy a gun on Sunday, right?
Try to make it harder to get a gun, and I'm not saying we should, but I do think that there should be background checks for people to buy guns because I don't like the idea of crazy people carrying guns around. But God forbid we try to pass a legislation like that because we're infringing on their Second Amendment rights. We have a right to vote. Everybody in the United States who's a citizen has a right to vote. And when you make laws like this, you're infringing on their ability and that right to vote. And voting should be easy, at least as easy as buying a gun.
Yeah. And also, the idea is that, every single supervisor of elections, every single secretary of state, their goal is to have as many people vote as possible. The Pinellas County Supervisor of Elections, Julie Marcus, she, part of the evaluation process is how many people voted, and did we, what percentage of voters or what percentage of our county is registered, what percentage of those registered voters voted. And it's extraordinarily important to have as many people voting as possible. And so, these supervisor of elections in Pinellas County, Deborah Clark was our supervisor of elections for many, many years. And Pinellas County has also been essentially the tip of the spear for mail balloting in Florida. So I believe that we've had the highest or one of the highest rates of mail-in balloting, for the past 12 years. Obviously, this was the first time in Florida history that Democrats voted more by mail than Republicans. But the stupid part about that is up until this election, it's always been Republicans. And honestly, if Republicans just voted like they normally would vote by mail, they probably still would have outvoted Democrats by mail. They obviously voted, and it's just because they waited. So this whole idea is just nonsense. The only reason why Republicans voted in less numbers by mail is because Trump told them that it wasn't safe to vote by mail.
Right.
Go vote in person.
Dan, you're pretty plugged in, especially locally. Is there any way we could get somebody in on the show who could talk to us and explain to our listeners what happens with a ballot when it comes in, when it's mailed in? Somebody who's on the canvassing board who can explain how a ballot is handled once it comes to the door, what they do with it, when they count it, when it's registered, so that people, at least our few listeners, and if they tell their friends and their friends tell their friends, maybe we can at least provide a little bit of mental security for these people to understand that when you vote by mail, it is actually just as safe, if not safer, than voting in person. Because the thing is, when you vote in person, especially if you vote on election day, anything can happen, and we don't have time to fix it because the elections are going to be there. Once election day is over, that's it. There's counting still being done, obviously, and to many people's chagrin, we'll continue to vote counts past election day if they're coming in and we haven't counted them all. But we can't fix your problem. You can't go back in and re-vote after election day. So voting early and mail-in votes are great because I can check to see if you've received it. I can check on the website to make sure that that vote has come in and has been counted and has been received. And it's actually the safest way to vote. Or like I like to do, I fill out my mail-in ballot and then I take it down there and I turn it in myself just because I like to do things in person. Like I won't even make check deposits on the new apps and the ATM machines. I have to go in and have someone like take it and see it going in. And I understand.
You really are your parents, aren't you?
Like, I am. I write checks.
You are that guy. You are that guy in the show.
I gotta have. But I can understand that. But we've made it so that you can feel more secure voting by mail. There for a long time in like 2008, we had a very difficult time convincing people, especially African Americans, to vote by mail. We were trying to convince them to vote by mail. They're like, no, Republicans vote by mail. We don't vote by mail. I'm like, well, why don't you vote by mail? Well, because we don't know where these votes are going. We send them out. We don't know where they're going. We don't trust these people. We don't know what they're doing. The supervisor of elections is Republican. We don't trust any of this. And we had to work hard to convince them that you could track that vote. And once we got good at it and we convinced these people, we passed the Republicans and we became better at voting by mail and voting early. And when that happened, the Republicans, they started backing out of vote by mail, and they said that it was corrupt when there's
it wasn't even that. I mean, the reality is it wasn't even that. It was just Donald Trump, because we didn't even know that Democrats were going to vote more by mail when he started his barrage against the mail-in balloting. And
he saw the numbers starting. He saw the numbers starting to change, though.
Yeah,
with COVID, that he thought he had an advantage because he's saying, okay, we got two sets of people here, Republicans, Democrats. We also have independents, obviously. But the Democrats are scared because they believe in COVID. I've convinced my people that COVID's not real and it's not something to fear. So my people are going to come out and vote. And if we can suppress the mail-in vote, then those people on the Democratic side aren't going to go to the polls. So it's going to work in our advantage. And then if they do, then we can challenge the validity of the election based on my arguments that mail-in ballots are fraudulent. So it was kind of a pretty well thought out plan for a maniacal villain, but it just didn't work because thank God our democracy actually worked. And those supervisor of elections, especially in states like Georgia, where they were Republicans, and with as much pressure as the president put on them to invalidate the election, they still did the right thing and counted all the votes.
Well, and I don't know if you saw, I think it was Georgia's Secretary of State was just discussing, because Georgia's doing, their legislators are Republican. Essentially, any state that has a Republican legislature and a Republican governor right now seems to be starting to pass all these different laws and to restrict voting and mail-in ballots and all this other stuff. And Georgia's Secretary of State just came out and essentially just said, look, they're changing all this stuff because of nonsense. Like, there is no legitimate reason to make these changes. Just like in Florida, like, nobody has shown that there's more fraud on Sundays or that there's more fraud in these drop boxes or whatever. Like, I mean, the reality of Pinellas County is we have 3 early vote locations for primaries: downtown Clearwater, downtown St. Pete, and the main office on Starkey and Largo.
And that's a problem, if you ask me.
There's nothing north of Clearwater. That's it. I mean, downtown Clearwater is
nowhere near enough places. That's crazy. That's been a beef I've had for a long time, and I know that I've heard some pretty good arguments from secretaries, the election supervisors in the county over that. But when I can go to
you go to Pasco and they have 17 or 11 of them,
right? And you have near 20 early voting locations. That's crazy. If you live in Tarpon Springs, especially North Tarpon Springs near the border, and you need to get to Clearwater, I mean, you're talking about an hour-long commute with traffic by getting all the way down 19 and then getting all the way down Gulf to Bay, depending on which way you go. And that is not convenient. It's not convenient at all.
Especially if you don't have transportation. You know, like if you're relying on public transportation, now you're turning that into an entire day's trip just to go down to downtown Clearwater and drop your ballot off. Now, because
you have a day off.
You know, mailing your ballot, it should be fine. But as you said, a lot of people don't feel comfortable with the mail and they'd rather drop it off, or they want to vote in person. And so if you're gonna say everybody has to vote in person, okay, well, now let's set up 20 or 30 in-person early vote sites so that people can actually do this. Because going on the day of is just, you know, I mean, it's like a lot of things in life. You know, as soon as you can't go backwards. And so I was just thinking about this on the way, down Palm Harbor today. You drive in and you see these big giant churches, and you think about, oh, what churches used to look like. And, in Charleston, West Virginia, or Nitro, West Virginia, nice little old church with the pews. And that's kind of like my idea of what church is. But that is not what today's churches look like. Today's churches look like the Calvary Baptist Church on McWellan Booth. They're the Indian Rocks Christian Church down on Walsingham. They're giant. They're theaters, they have ball fields, they have all these things. Like, churches are not going to go back to the days of just a basic church and a basic stuff. They're going to have the entertainment, they're going to have the speakers, the light shows. Like, that's part of, that's what's happened now. And so the same thing here. Like, we're not going to go back to everybody going in line on election day. That's insane. And if you're older,
it's not necessary. It's just not necessary. I think you have to look at what is the goal. Is the goal to get more people to vote, or is the goal to get less people of a particular type to vote? And I think the latter is the obvious explanation as to why all these laws are passing. They're like, we're not going to let this happen again. Georgia is not going to go blue again. That's what they're saying in these Republican areas. And that's what they're saying in Florida too. I mean, even though Florida performed very well in this last election, the Republicans performed very well in Florida in this last election. They're going to continue to expand that gap. What's Justin saying? They're basically admitting,
and it's true. I mean, there's actually been Republicans who have said that, not out loud, but in emails that have been released. Yeah, so they understand that they cannot win without suppressing the vote, and and that's a pretty sad day when your party understands that they can't win without restricting the vote. And that's what they're doing. And that's
if you're going to be the party of white males, and you're going to continue to be a small tent and be the party of white males, how else are you going to be able to hold on to power in the United States when the demographics are changing every day and becoming a lot less white, and people are not thinking in these traditional ways that they want people to continue to think. And so unless they can bring some people into their tent, they have been successful at bringing Cuban Americans in Florida into their tent, but that's about it, man. They're not expanding their reach. In fact, right now they're probably fracturing the reach that they have by having a moderate Democratic Party and a Trump party. And they know that they're in their last throes if they don't do something quickly to hang on to power. And that's really what they're left with.
So now let's refocus a little bit here. And what about, so we have some other stuff, we're not all just, bashing the Republicans and the GOP, which they do deserve. But like, I think it was yesterday, the Senate decided that they were going to remove the $15 an hour minimum wage, right? And so some of the progressive wings in the party are really putting President Biden on what do you call it? On bash or whatever. And, they're really putting up a big stink and fight about this, the $15 minimum wage in the coronavirus relief and budget bill. And so what are your thoughts about, because the Democrats obviously have not the same, but they have their own internal struggles with the progressive wing / moderate wing. And so what do you think about, starting that right now? Like he just got elected. He's just trying to roll, and they're, throwing him under the bus for this.
Well, I think that his concern is that there are moderate Democrats, such as Joe Manchin, who I'm pretty familiar with. Justin Woods, who listens to our show, is very familiar with because we're from West Virginia, and he was once governor and now senator of West Virginia, has been someone who's really flexed his muscle lately. And some of these things that we thought were going to be easy to pass because we have a majority in the Senate, very thin majority, as thin as it could possibly be. You have these moderates who are flexing their muscle. People like Joe Manchin says, "Hey, you need my vote," and I'm really not a Democrat or a Republican. I just do what my people want me to do. It's hard to believe that the people in West Virginia don't want a $15 minimum wage, but it is easy to believe if you've been there long enough that you know that these people oftentimes vote against their own interests, because the majority of the state of West Virginia would probably benefit. But there is an argument. And rightfully so, there is an argument that a lot of small businesses would die if they had to pay the wages of $15 an hour to all of their employees, because going from minimum wage now all the way to $15 an hour overnight would be could be fatal to a lot of businesses. But I don't think that's what the proposal is. If the proposal was, not is, but was anything like Florida's, it goes up progressively over the years so that we don't have this one shock increase where people's payrolls have to double overnight. But my opinion of it is if it moves up slowly, I think businesses can adapt. There are some prices that would certainly rise, but like I've told people before, personally, I don't mind paying 50 cents extra for a Whopper if I know that somebody that's working there is going to get a living wage. Like, that doesn't bother me. But there are mom and pop businesses who might not be able to get by with it. So is there a way that we can come up with a plan that companies who gross only so much have to pay the $15, and then small businesses can opt to pay less if the employees are willing to take less? That's the question.
Well, I think that's going to be a hard one to implement. But I think, part of the issue with the Senate parliamentarian, I think, is more of a procedural issue as far as it's not that the Senate or the parliamentarian, all that kind of stuff, didn't want to have it in the bill. It's just that their opinion was that it is in a kind of like an extraneous, or my vocabulary is not very good today, but it doesn't really have to do with the actual budget or the coronavirus relief bill, I think, is the issue. In that and honestly, I probably do believe that it should be something done. It doesn't have to be done separately from everything else, but it is not a coronavirus related thing.
Yeah, I mean, you could always try to tie things together. I think in the state of Florida, we have what's called a bill of attainder. And I could be wrong if I remember this correctly from school, but basically says that a bill has to be one issue. You have to attack one issue, which we know in federal government that's not necessarily the case, because we're throwing pork and we're throwing everything into a bill just to get the votes. Because if one congressman or legislator goes to another one and says, "Hey, I need you to vote for this bill," like, that's fine if you throw in this $5 million bridge that I need built in my district. If you throw that in the bill, I'll vote for it. And that's the kind of thing that really bothers people. It's the making of the sausage that you don't really like to see. But that is how laws are made in Washington. And should it be? No, probably not. I think if we're dealing with coronavirus relief bill, then we need to, but would it be a relief to people to make more money? I think that argument could be made, yes. But would it be a burden for companies who are struggling right now to have to pay more money to their employees when they're already struggling? So I think that cuts both ways. No matter what, if it's a bill by itself or it's a bill with the COVID bill, it's going to need to be addressed at some point. Minimum wage has to go up. The cost of everything's gone up. Somebody said, I think it was Senator John Thune said today, "Hey, listen, when I was a kid, I made $6 an hour." Well, if you added inflation to that today, that would be $24 an hour that he was making. So it doesn't make sense, that everything else goes up, but minimum wage doesn't. It's just a question of morality. Do we want to pay people a living wage for a job? And all the arguments I hear is, "Hey, when I was 17 years old and I worked at so-and-so restaurant, or I worked at, wherever, I made minimum wage, and kids shouldn't be able to make $15 an hour working in high school." And I understand that, but for a lot of people, that's their career, is working, at Burger King or McDonald's. That's what they do. For whatever reason, that's their life. And not to pay them a minimum wage when they work more than a living wage when they work full time. I think it was Obama that said nobody should work full time and not be able to pay their bills.
Yep, I agree. I agree with that. And it probably took me a little bit longer than some to get to that point. But like you just said, the reality is that, I mean, I was paid minimum wage, but it was, but you could also like buy a car for like $2,500 and stuff.
Right.
It was an old car, but you could buy one. Insurance was a lot cheaper, all this stuff. And like you said, and if $24 an hour, and that becomes the issue with housing, of course, and that's becoming a bigger issue here in Pinellas County as housing prices go up, rent has been going up, but income has not been going up. And so that's of course the biggest problem here, is that, especially, and we've heard the discussion about millennials and now the next generation after that, with student loan, with low wages, like in rising real estate cost, are they being muscled out of the real estate market? That is, especially when that's considered the the fastest way or the easiest way for people to generate wealth, and to especially when you're looking at the minority populations, home ownership is the key. And that was, I think one of the eventual problems with George Bush. He believed in home ownership, and he believed in making it more accessible, but that also brought upon the financial crisis in the late 2000s because they were giving away money.
And I think the Clinton administration was somewhat to blame for that too. I think a lot of those policies for opening home ownership up to new generations of people was well intended, but I do believe that it did cause the market to essentially crash like it did in 2008, 2009. Is that me, or do we have someone at the door? Can you hear that?
It's on me. So, but yeah. So, and that was the issue too, though, is the when you're pushing that much money out into a system and it was not regulated, and that was the other issue here, is that it was so totally unregulated. I had people, acquaintances, I won't call them friends. I mean, I did know them, but they got arrested for mortgage fraud. It was an attorney and a title and a mortgage broker, and nobody was reviewing stuff. You could just put whatever you wanted on loan applications. There was no verification of income. I mean, these are just crazy things that you would think like, what? But they were just giving money away. And so,
laissez-faire. It was.
Yeah.
It was.
I mean, look, you want to buy this house? Oh, okay. The house is $200,000. You need $200,000. Okay. Well, we can give you $225 if you want. Like, you can pocket the 25.
Take a little more. Put in your pocket.
Yeah, they were saying because houses, the rates are going. I mean, real estate's going up so fast. It's going to be valuable. You'll sell it in 5 years. And I think
houses, man, flipping houses. Everybody flip houses.
Well, I was going to say that I think is probably what also got us into some of this trouble is instead of people looking at their home as their home and an investment, obviously, they thought of it as an opportunity to live somewhere for a few years, appreciate it, and flip it.
Yeah.
So it became more of an investment than your home that you're going to live in for the next 20 years. Yeah.
No, that was a thing. And you know what? I don't think you can talk about this issue that we have right now with homeownership and the problem with the housing without talking about student loan debt and the student loan debt crisis. I don't think that we've talked much about this on the show, but I know a lot of people have opinions because some people who've paid off their loans or decided not to go to college because they didn't want to take out a loan have a huge problem with the proposal or the thought of forgiving loans for people. But we literally have trillions of dollars tied up in student loans right now. And people who are exiting school with the rising cost of higher education are getting out of school with huge amounts of debt. And they're not able to buy houses. They're not able to buy cars. And the economy is due for a huge bounce if we were to forgive at least a portion of these loans, because it would free up so much money to get back out into the market. But right now it's just tied up and being paid, and not to mention the interest that the government literally makes off of these student loan payments. I mean, when you've got a bill of over $100,000, which I can tell you that happens, think about the interest on that alone over years and years and years. Most people that are in that situation are only able to afford to pay the interest, and that's all they get. So if you can't buy a house, if you have millions of families coming out of college and going out into the real world and not able to buy a house, not able to buy a car, living with their parents, is that good for our economy? Obviously not.
No.
What are your thoughts on forgiveness?
Well,
what should the Biden administration do?
Well, I think, obviously it's an easier subject to talk about than to have it happen in real life. At the very least, I think that we need to look at that loan forgiveness program that has done virtually nothing under Betsy DeVos, whatever. Because the reality is, like, if you're a teacher, if you're going to be a police officer, if you're going to do some of these things that, because a lot of police officers are required to have bachelor degrees now. A lot of people think of law enforcement as, whatever, but they have to, most law enforcement officers nowadays are college educated. They didn't just roll off the country truck or whatever. They're educated.
I want to see a citation for that statistic that most police officers have.
Well, I know. Look, Largo for the last 20 years, I think, is requiring college degrees. So, and I believe
nationwide, I would like to see. I would like to see a statistic, especially in rural areas.
A lot of departments do require. Now, look, we all know there's lots of people in college that there's people who graduated law school, and you wonder, like, they're not the brightest tack in the, not the, the brightest bulb in the box here, but somehow they got through law school. But it is something that at least at the very, very, very least, we need to help those people who are giving back to our communities, who are essentially civil servants, because you can't ask somebody to take $50,000 in student loans to become a teacher. That. You just you can't. I mean, and that's
I do like the service or the what is it called? The service loan forgiveness program that was created under the Obama administration, and it basically says that if you work in a service based job, such as an assistant state attorney, a public defender, a teacher, something like that, then if you work there for 10 years and you've made 120 payments on time, at least the bare minimum payments on time, then the remainder of your loan will be forgiven. That's of your federal loan, nothing private. It's tough. It's tough to say whether or not that's been successful, because once that 10-year mark hit for the very first person that signed up for it, we were now under Betsy DeVos and we were now under the Trump administration, and they were trying very hard not to allow these to work. I do want to read Jake Boland's comment because he works in higher education. Yes, yeah, absolutely. He says that many do not have anything to show for 1 year of college that they attempted besides the burden of loans.
And I think that's part of this, and I mean, I know in high school and especially nowadays, most people feel that there's this pressure to put everybody in college. And it starts, obviously there's lots of pressure, just not only just to go to college, but to prepare for college, meaning that you have to take every activity under the sun in order to put that on your college resume so that you can get into college. There are so many people that college is not the right thing. I mean, we all need to be educated. So it doesn't matter. And I'm not suggesting that people don't get any further education out of college, but there's a lot of other educational opportunities besides college,
right?
The traditional college.
I mean, have you paid a plumber or electrician lately?
Yeah.
Cow. Those guys. I mean,
I think we just opened up I just saw something, a lineman school for power linemen. And you can understand the that's not going anywhere. No matter what, we're going to have a power grid, and those people do. I mean, I know I've known some in the past. They make better money than I have at different years. So it's not.
God knows we need upgrades to our power grid.
Yeah,
if we've missed anything in the last week, our power grid is way beyond. I mean, it's from a lot of our power grid is literally from the beginning of the last century, and it's the same technology being used from the beginning of the last century. The power grids in, say, Japan are so further along than that in the United States. And we could also talk about Texas's power grid that they choose to do on their own. They're one of 3 power grids, I believe, in the United States. Texas has their own, and they do not regulate. And they wanted to avoid regulation by doing it on their own and not letting the federal government get involved. And the lack of regulation has caused a few problems. But we can always blame it on wind turbines.
Yeah, I know. And then, so before we will get some personal stuff too, but I wanted to touch on, I believe yesterday, the ERA was passed. That's the Equality Rights Act, was passed, I believe, in the House. And so they're working on getting it through the Senate. But of course, we have our Georgia House member who has some issues. And so, a lot of people, it seems like a lot of people feel this law is okay, except where it seems like the really only arguments here seem to be about people who are concerned about transgenders being in bathrooms and transgender women playing sports. And I can't imagine that there's more than maybe 100 of those sports cases probably in an entire year out of the millions and millions of women and young girls who are playing athletics. And you might have 100 people who are transgender, who are playing sports, and potentially, because I mean, that's the argument. And it is a tricky argument, but I will say, I saw an article, there was a young lady that she was banned from some international tournaments or athletic events because her testosterone levels were too high, naturally. So they're naturally occurring. And I was thinking about it, and it's the reality is that is a sexist thing to do, because I don't believe any male athlete has ever been told that they're not allowed to compete with other men because their natural level of testosterone is higher. I can't guarantee you, because I've never tested his blood, but I would venture to say that LeBron James had a higher level of testosterone when he was in high school than every single other person in his high school. That is part of what makes professional athletes. It's part of what makes these people better. They have a naturally occurring higher testosterone level that allowed him to grow. I mean, he had facial hair when he was like 5. He had a full beard when he was in high school.
What if female athletes are taking testosterone supplements as part of their therapy? And is that unfair? Do you think that is performance enhancing? I mean,
well, if they're taking therapy to become a man, then I don't necessarily think I mean, look, this is just talking, so I'm not going to, it's not necessarily
I'm not going to pin you down on any of this.
Yeah, but I mean, it would seem that if you're trying to compete as a man, you probably shouldn't, or not compete as a man, but if you see yourself as a man, you probably shouldn't be competing against women, So, I mean, that would just be more of a practical side. But, because obviously that idiot, that lady from Georgia, when she puts out that stupid sign on her wall that says there are 2 sexes, trust the science. And she's just an idiot.
Science.
That's not the science.
I didn't know science existed.
Yeah, like nothing I mean, this is the reality. Like nothing in biology is black or white. Like everything is gray.
Really, the amount of male and the chromosomes, and it's really a lot more gray than people think. I
mean, I know, like when we grew up, we read a book that said "See Dick run, see Jane." Like it was only Dick and Jane. That's it. I understand.
Yeah,
but that book was wrong. Like that's what it turns out. The book was wrong.
I still don't think that they should take away Mr. Potato Head, though. I mean,
it's just going to be Potato Head. You can make yours Mr. Potato Head.
Yeah,
I can make mine Mrs. Potato Head.
I can buy accessories.
Yeah.
Because it's Mr. Potato Head and a bucket of parts.
Well, and it's just it's like what you said. It's the change, right? It's because that's how we grew up, and we don't want to see anything change, and blah 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 blah.
Well, it's not really an issue that like all the things in this country that we are worried about. Is this being used as a wedge issue to split us apart and to divide and conquer, or is this seriously an issue that we have to address as a country because it's such a big deal right now? I really don't think it's something to get the base fired up on the other side.
But it's not even a political issue. The reality is these are decisions made by private companies because they feel like removing the Mr. is probably going to lead to better sales. Like they're doing the right thing because they think it's going to lead to them better profits. Which is what you hope. Like they're not doing it because Democrats are pressuring them to remove the Mr. They're doing it. What is it? Barbie is selling balls. They're selling dolls that have darker skin, that have lighter skin, that have different color hair, that have different sizes because they know that it sells better. When you make dolls that actually look like people or that they can relate to, they're more likely to purchase.
Well, the fear is that there's a fear that someone's trying to take away the white American way of life, that the powers that be on the Democratic and liberal agenda are trying to slowly dismantle the white American way of a Christian Protestant way of life, and that they're trying to tear that apart for no other reason than I don't know what the reason they think it is, but they're trying to rip away their culture, their home, what they think, and they believe in this genuinely, and they think that that's what's happening right now, and that they're losing their way of life, their way of living, their culture, what's made us all so successful and made America so great. But the argument on the other side is it's not. It's just being inclusive, and that's what's made us great, and that's what's going to continue to make us great, is that we have a lot of different opinions, a lot of different thoughts, and we have diversity. So you either stand on one side of it or the other. But I think if you're on the right side of history, you're going to be on the side of inclusion and respecting everybody and empowering everybody. And I think that's the way things are going to go eventually. And if you don't believe that, then I think you're on the wrong side of history.
I agree. And the issue too is, that I don't even know, I am Marjorie, whatever her name is. And she sits there and says that she's speaking up for women's rights and children's rights. So like, this is the first time that I've ever heard, I hate to say it, but I've heard a Republican utter the words women's rights, which seems kind of a farce here, because I just read a post from the National Organization of Women, who obviously have been very, very, very supportive of this entire, the ERA. That for years they've been pushing this and working on this very hard. And to sit there and say that she's doing what she's doing to protect women's rights, the reality is too, as you and I are well aware, Democrats are made up not primarily, but the majority of Democrats are women, and many of them are women of color and all kinds of other stuff. And they are the ones who are pushing this. This is not some bill being pushed by men who want to get into bathrooms. It's just absurd.
The argument that I like is like, oh, they're just trying to sneak it in the women's bathroom so they can see me pee.
Yeah, and listen to everybody do what they do in a bathroom. Like, yeah, that's really what I want to do. Come on. But that is the argument. Like, that is the number one argument against this, is we can't have men in the women's bathroom. That's just disgusting. Like, it just makes me. Have you ever been in a men's bathroom before? Yeah, I've been in a women's bathroom only because it was an accident, and then I was like,
oh yeah, sure it was, sure. Yeah.
Sam's too. I was like,
oops.
It was like, huh. Man, they really dressed up the men's bathroom finally. I was like, I've never seen like this nice stuff. There's flowers in here.
Biden's really cleaning up the place.
Yeah, and then you realize, like, why don't they do this stuff in the men's bathroom? Like the men's bathroom, they just leave everything the way it is. Like, I guess that's how we are. But you walk into the women's bathroom and there's pictures on the wall. There's fresh flowers in a vase.
Hey, while we're talking about bathrooms, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What are your feelings on bathroom attendants? Creepy, not creepy, helpful?
Creepy. I really don't need a person standing outside the stall as I'm trying to take care of business.
I can't stand it anywhere I've ever gone as a bathroom attendant. I hate it. I'm uncomfortable the whole time. Like, I'm way more worried about bathroom attendants than I am the other sex coming into my bathroom.
Well, I'm not necessarily worried about the attendant.
Again, like, what? I can get a towel. I mean, I know some people need jobs, but man, is that really the way to go?
Look, I respect the people who do it. I have no issues with that. I just think it's kind of unnecessary.
Nothing wrong with it. If that's what you want to do, that's your job. That's good. But
I guess if you forgot to put some polo on before you came out,
a very avid public bathroom user, like not so much in the last year, but I can tell you that it is not comfortable. I don't like it. I don't like knowing there's a stranger behind me just chilling while I'm relieving myself at the bathroom, at the urinal. I'm a no. I'm in the no camp. No camp.
I'm with you. I could live without ever seeing another bathroom attendant in my life. So as long as that's clean, we're good.
I mean, thanks for the mints. But if I take some gum, like he's got whole packs of gum in there. If I take a pack of gum, what do I owe this guy? Now I'm putting $5 in there, and I realized I just went in and paid $5 for spearmint gum.
This dude is standing in a bathroom listening to people do whatever they got to do. I mean, I couldn't even imagine having to sit there and smell all that. Like, ugh. Come on, this is just not good
for anybody. That whole industry is not good for anybody.
They need to tip that person very well, I guess. But
but see, that's what sucks is you got to tip. I don't even want him there, but now I got to give him money because it's almost like this guy's like hit rock bottom. I got to give him money. It's like, yeah, I don't know, man. And then I try to hold it so I don't have to go in there and give him more money. And so now my bladder's going bad. I've got a bad bladder anyway, and
you should let the establishment know because you're not drinking as much because if you're holding it, right? I mean, you'd be losing
money because I'm not buying as many drinks because I know where I'm going to have to go, and so I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. I think we should take this up as a subject on one of our next shows. Can we get a bathroom attendant on the show?
That would be an interesting call, or an interesting segment. I'm having an earthquake here with the dog.
If I see any this weekend, I will invite them to the show, but virtually.
Yeah, I have not been to a restaurant that had one or a club. I guess it was a nightclub. I guess probably the last place I was in, like a nightclub or something in Ybor, like 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Well, not 30, I'd be 10. Like 15 years ago, maybe. But it's been a while. So
I wonder if somebody could do a story on bathroom attendants and how COVID has affected the industry.
Yes, probably worse so than even the Uber drivers. Although they just switched to kind of Uber Eats, I think. So anyway, before we wind down, Mr. Parker, what are you going to do this weekend?
Oh, I don't know. I think we're going to go down to Clearwater now and hang out at the cantina over in Clearwater Beach, enjoy the sunset, relax in the week. My wife and I have a babysitter, so we're going to go hang out and have some fun. And then tomorrow, I believe we're going to be out on the water. We're going to do some boating tomorrow. And so I think that's pretty much our weekend in a nutshell. I'm sure there'll be some leaves involved somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I got yoga Saturday and Sunday right now. So Saturday is going to be over at Philippi Park. That's
beautiful.
9 o'clock at the burial mound. So anybody who's interested, it's $10. And so then on Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning, it's free, and that's downtown Safety Harbor. So there's a couple of yoga classes. They're very good. I've noticed it's I think it is working so far. So,
okay.
Yeah, and then maybe. Well, I'm going to go see my nephew play baseball. So on Saturday, so I will ride my bike over to yoga and then ride my bike over to Oldsmar. So he's going to play in Oldsmar, and then we have maybe some kayaking or something on Sunday.
There you go.
The weather is the weather that we have this weekend is like, this is why you come to Florida. This is why you're here. 80 degrees and sunny. Like it doesn't get better than that. So.
Absolutely. It's so nice. And you know what? We are now in the market for a golf cart. We're looking for a golf cart, trying to find a good deal on one if we can find one. So if there's anybody out there who has any good leads on a nice golf cart, we are looking for one. That's a great way to enjoy the weather around here with sort of a golf cart kind of community.
If you don't have a team, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're not made of money.
So here we had a Facebook user, and he is warning you, Mr. Parker, holding your pee can damage your prostate and make it harder to get an erection. So do not. Yes. So for our listeners and watchers out there, do not hold your pee because it can cause you.
Whoever posted that, are they a bathroom attendant?
I don't know. It just says Facebook user. They did not give us permission. Whatever they were supposed to do so that we could see who they are. So we'll find out who these people are later.
I do appreciate the comment, and I will actually, I'm going to have to go now because I got to go.
Because he's got a date tonight and doesn't want to.
You can still have dates when you're married. You need a date.
We'll address that on a future show.
Next week.
Go. It's time. I think we're over time, so we don't have any time to address that today. So
want to know what's going on in Dan's love life next week.
Listen, I'm taking yoga now, so between all these yoga classes, something is bound to happen. Okay, so we'll see how.
We're going to hold you to it. We're going to check in every week.
Okay, that'll work. We'll do that at the very end of the show. We will always touch on that at 5:05 p.m. So the show is at 5, so we'll get to that. Yep.
Namaste.
All right, everybody.
Downward dog.
Weekend. Yes, that is actually, let me tell you, it is harder than you think. Like, it's one thing, like when you're in downward dog for like 5 seconds, it's a whole other thing. Like when you're repeatedly going back into that position over the period of an hour. So much more difficult than it looks. So anyway,
I got to see this.
Yes, no. Well, you can. I mean, it's your loss. I mean, you can't unsee it.
I got
to things you can't unsee.
You're damaging my prostate right now. I got to pee.
It's so funny. I saw the instructor, right, is doing the same little thing with her leg up in the air, and her leg just goes like completely straight. And then you see me and everybody else in the class, and our legs are all crooked and bent and like pretzels because we just can't stretch our legs out like that. So, yeah. But it's good to see other people struggle with me too. So,
well, it takes time. You'll get there.
It does. So, anyway, for me, I'm done. How about you?
I'm out. I got to go use the bathroom.
All right, everybody. Have a good week.
No bathroom attendance at our office.
We'll see you next week. Let us know if you have any topics that you'd like us to discuss. We're open, maybe, sometimes.
Dance love life.
We'll see you next week. Peace out.